So I've heard you talk about like the World Economic Forum and the UN and their initiatives around gender equity. What can you tell me about that?
Oh gosh, the UN is an absolute disaster, and that's why you have seen recently the United States withdraw some of its funding from the UN. Israel as well has withdrawn funding. One of the agencies, the one that I pay the most attention to, which was on the list um, of the agencies that the US was no longer going to fund or was going to significantly cut back funding, is UN Women. So UN Women is guided by feminist intersectional theory. They're explicit about that. It's in their documentation. So it's already a problem from the start because there's many holes in those theories. And so I've done some analysis of the UN where I've quantified their substantial anti-male bias, and I've also quantified and kind of captured the way they go about propaganda on X. And so it's a very problematic group. UN Women is, and I hope that. I wish it would just change. I wish it would just listen to feedback. In my opinion, the UN, if you're going to have a UN Women, you should have a UN Men. Probably, I wish there was no UN Women or UN Men, and maybe no UN at all, because it's, that whole organization is just completely captured by a certain ideology. It pumps out the same no matter what, because the UN has many different, like, sub-agencies, and no matter which one you follow, it's the same alarmist rhetoric in all their tweets. It's the same ideology. They are not politically neutral at all. So, either you change your way or we just completely defund you. That's my approach with the UN after studying them for a couple years now.
Some of these things, like the UN, you should take what you think a stronger stance on, like female genital mutilation in Sudan, for instance. You think that would be like a one to really lay down the law on, but instead it's like kind of like your upper middle class women in the West, kind of like boutique issues. Does it feel like that?
Yeah, a little bit. It's kind of a weird organization in the sense that um, they focus on, or at least their social media presence, they'll focus on a couple things that might kind of be like, oh, okay, so they're focused in on women in Afghanistan, for example, which you look at that, okay, yeah, yeah, I can get on board with that. And then they might focus on, Sudan and a couple of other places. But then it's not entirely clear what exactly they're accomplishing. And to the extent they are accomplishing some things, it just has this other component of it, which is very generalized. So they sort of put out kind of these very general messages about, um, like, essentially how women across the world have it so bad. And that might be true for certain countries, but it is not true globally. And in doing that, they go about lying. They suppress data related to male victimization. Like you mentioned, they do talk about female genital mutilation, but the UN actually promotes the male version of that, which is male circumcision. So they are a completely biased organization in the direction of favoring women and not talking about men's issues, and that's sort of the thing that I go on and on about.
It's kind of interesting. What came up for me is like there's very real human faces behind the pain. I think a lot of times it's dismissed. Well, we need to focus on women because men have all the privilege and they're doing just fine and dandy anyway. So they're not worth our time and attention. But there really are like there's human faces and human suffering behind this disparity in who gets attention and who gets funding.
That's right. And the other silly thing about all this is, by helping men, you help women. Um, to the extent that men, have certain mental health difficulties or what have you, healthier men is a healthier society. It's healthier relationships with women. It's healthier relationships with their kids. It's healthier relationships with colleagues at work. And that's sort of how you know that it's more about ideology than helping people, because it's not looking at it from that type of perspective where you would say, oh, look, our end goal is really just is to make everyone's lives better and the world better and human flourishing. It's not. It's very ideological. So it's like we're starting from a standpoint that we are only interested in women, and we will continue to push whatever narrative we have to keep that going, rather than just having empathy for all potential, victims of abuse or disadvantage.